Dana here. Welcome to Sew Learn Create. Please subscribe to my channel and help it grow. It's a great place for beginner sewers to learn new projects. Today's project is a part of my Christmas in July series, and it makes great gifts for everyone on your list. It's a lid gripper or a jar opener. This one is a large one. This one is a small one, and today's project we'll be making one that's kind of in between, a medium size. So let's get started. For this project, the lid gripper, you'll just need a few supplies. You'll need some 5-inch squares, 2 fabrics, then you'll also need a 5-inch square of shelf liner. I like to use the thin shelf liner that you get at Dollar Tree or any Walmart, Dollar Tree store. It's a little thinner than your other shelf liner, and that works better. If the shelf liner is too thick, it's really difficult to sew. So you just want to check and make sure it's a little bit on the thinner side. To lay it out, you're going to need your pretty fabric, and then your bottom fabric just needs to be something that's neutral that kind of matches your shelf liner, and I'm just using a muslin. So we're going to lay our muslin down. We're going to put our shelf liner on top, lining it up really well. Then we're going to take our pretty fabric and we're going to turn it right side down. Going to line up all the edges really well, and then when we go to the machine, we're going to stitch all the way around, leaving a small opening so we can turn it. So I'm going to use my trick of my start with my green clip, my stop with my red clip. This will be my opening for my turning. So I'm going to finish clipping it all the way around, and we'll head to the machine. So now we're at the machine, and again we're going to stitch all the way around, leaving a small opening. So I'm going to start right here at my green clip, place it in my machine. I'm going to use the outside edge of my foot as my guide so that I have a nice wide seam allowance. Always start with your needle down. When I get to this corner, I'm going to put my needle down and lift and turn. Needle down, lift my presser foot, turn my square, and continue on. Lift and turn. Almost done. Last corner, lift and turn. And remember, I'm going to stop here at my red clip, so I'm going to remove it, and I'm going to put my finger there as a reminder. I'm going to pull my project out, clip my threads, and when we go back to the mat, I'll show you the next step. Now that we've stitched all the way around and left our small opening, we're going to just double check and make sure that it caught all of our fabric pieces. So I like to do a quick check, pulling back, making sure that it caught my shelf liner, and I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. On this project, that shelf liner has a tendency to wiggle on you, so it's always good to double check. I know it got close over here because when I was stitching it, I could feel it in the machine, but it looks like it caught all the way down. And one last side, and it looks like we're good. So now we're going to clip our corners, and you always clip your corners diagonally across the corner through all your fabrics, making sure that you don't clip your stitching. And we're going to do that on all 4 corners. And what this does is it reduces the bulk so that when you turn your project right side out, you can get your corners nice and crisp. And now we're ready to go back to our opening and turn it right side out. Now with this project, you've got 3 layers instead of just 2. So you want to make sure that you turn so that your gripper is on one side and your pretty fabric is on the other. So that way when you turn it right side out, your gripper fabric will be on the bottom, not your muslin fabric. So you want to make sure that you put your finger between the gripper fabric and your pretty fabric when you're getting ready to turn. Then I'm going to go to my far corner. That's just the way I do it. Put my thumb, kind of poke it back out, and that gives me a good chunk to grab a hold of. When you're turning this project right side out with the gripper fabric, it will have a tendency to kind of grab itself, so you just need to turn gently. But if you work at it and do it kind of slow, it will turn all the way right side out. So now we have it right side out, and we have our gripper on one side and our pretty fabric on the other. Then I'm going to take my chopstick, put it back through my opening, and I'm going to gently poke out my 4 corners. And remember, anytime you're poking corners out on a project like this, don't do it forcefully, or you could rip your stitches out, and then you have to turn it wrong side out again and start over. Do all 4 corners. And when I get the 2 corners done, I take my chopstick and kind of run it down that seam, and it helps it lay flat. So we have 1 more corner up here at the top. Gently pushing on it. Then I'm going to take my chopstick and run it down that seam just a little bit on all 4 sides, and that just helps it lay flat. Now I'm going to give it a quick press, but when I press it, always press it, because your gripper fabric is a rubber and it will melt, so you want to make sure that it's on the bottom, and we're just going to press so that we get it a little flatter, so when we top stitch it will stitch nicely. And I want to just do it gently, making sure that I'm not catching any of that shelf liner with the edge of my iron. And it doesn't have to be perfect. The other thing I want to catch is I want to make sure that my opening fabric is turned in nicely, so when I top stitch it will close up that hole. So now we'll go back to the machine. Now we're back at the machine, and we're just going to top stitch all the way around. So I like to start close to my opening, and I'm going to start probably right up here on the edge of my opening so that I can catch that first. I'm going to slide it in. I'm going to use the innermost edge of my presser foot so I get a nice close top stitch. And I will tell you that this gripper that's on the bottom will have a tendency to grip or stick to your machine a little bit. So you need to go slow, lengthen your stitch length a little bit, and then just gently, you may have to gently kind of pull your fabric through to get it started and keep it going, because it will grip that machine edge. So we're going to start. Once we get to that corner, we're going to put our needle down, lift and turn, and this is where you're probably going to have to give it a little bit of a pull to get it started on the next side. Once it's going, just keep on. Just have to give it a little bit of encouragement to get that corner started. And if it catches like that, just lift your needle, slide it slightly ahead so you can get a better grip. And usually that'll take care of it. Almost done. To our last corner, needle down, lift and turn. When we go back, we're going to stitch over these beginning stitches to lock them in place. This one's going to need a little more encouragement, it looks like. Sometimes I will hand crank a couple of stitches, and it's because you've got bulk and you've got that gripper that's sticking to your faceplate. There we go. Back stitch and lock those in place. I'm going to clip my threads and we'll go back to the mat to show you the last step. For our last step, we're going to secure the center of our lid gripper so that when we're putting it on a lid or a jar and trying to twist it, it doesn't twist your fabric. So we're going to use embroidery thread for that. You'll need embroidery floss, you'll need a large eye embroidery needle, and then we're just going to take a couple of stitches in the center. So we're going to pull some thread off here. Cut it, get that stray gray thread out of our way, and we're going to thread our needle. I use all 6 strands of my embroidery floss just to make it a little thicker. Thread all 6 strands. This is the tricky part, getting all through the eye of the needle. That's why you need a large eye needle. But you need one with a point. Don't get a cross stitch needle that's blunt because it won't work as well. It will work, but not as well because you'll have to pierce your fabric. Tie a knot. I'm going to set that to the side. Then to find the center of our lid gripper, I'm going to fold it in half, what I call hot dog style, or long. Then I'm going to fold it in half the other direction, which on a square, of course, makes 2 hot dogs. And I'm just going to kind of finger press. And what I'm looking for is the point where all those come together. And I usually just take a pencil and mark that right in the center. That's where I'm going to stitch my with my embroidery floss. I'm going to come up from underneath, find my point, and I'm going to pull it so that my knot goes underneath that gripper fabric. Then it's less likely to pull out. So see, it's underneath my gripper. Then when I stitch, I'll catch my gripper, but that way my knot is underneath. Then I'm just going to take a tiny stitch, and I'm basically going to make just a little X. Come all the way back down. Then when I come back up, I'm going to go just to one side of it. Doesn't really matter right or left. Pull my thread all the way up, and then I'm going to cross back over that first stitch. Now my fabric and my gripper fabric are caught, and I usually do that a couple of times because the gripper fabric is a little more it has holes in it, so you need to make sure that you catch it. Sometimes it's easier to do it from the back. Looks like I'm going to need a bigger stitch. So we're just going to make a bigger X. And I'm going to come back, go this direction, make a little bit bigger stitch, and back down. What I want to make sure is that my center fabric, my pretty fabric, is secure in the center, and my gripper fabric is secure to both layers. Then to tie it off, I take a tiny stitch underneath my gripper fabric and through all of my threads. Pull it to where I have a loop. Put my needle back through the loop, and then pull it tight. And I usually do that twice so that I get a double knot. So I'm going to take a tiny stitch through all my threads, get my loop, put my needle back through the loop, and then pull it. And then I can clip it. It really doesn't matter if it's a little messy looking on this side, because that's the underneath side that goes against a jar. And your lid gripper is complete. This size or a little bit smaller square is perfect for a lunchbox, to put in your lunchbox to open water bottles or anything like that. It's great for kids who sometimes struggle opening things at lunch, and they can do it on their own without having to ask for help. They also make great gifts for anybody who has a kitchen, which is almost everybody. Hope you enjoyed today's project, and be sure you subscribe to Sew Learn Create. See you in the next one.